In this episode, two young lovers take a fateful kayaking trip off the California coast. With no eyewitnesses and very little evidence to go on, investigators try to piece together the mystery when one of the bodies is found 5 miles out to sea. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is the terrifying shark attack of Tamara McAllister and Roy Stoddard. Welcome to Final Affliction. Boyfriend and girlfriend Roy Stoddard and Tamara McAllister were two 24-year-olds who met whilst teaching in the same school in West Malibu, California. They initially bonded over their sense for adventure. Tamara was preparing for public health work in Kenya as part of her master's degree. Roy turned his hand to anything from mountain climbing, biking, and surfing to scuba diving and kayaking. The two of them spent all their spare time hiking, camping, and kayaking together. On Thursday, January 26, 1989, the couple were training for a triathlon that they were planning on competing in together. In preparation for the upcoming race, they kayaked and swam daily. Their usual route took them on a 3-mile round trip from Latigo Point to Paradise Cove. They each took a single-man kayak into the water on that fateful day. They headed down to the water just before 9 a.m. Pausing on the sand, they both sat down and enjoyed a hot cup of coffee and a muffin to kickstart their day. A passerby saw them launch at 9:30 before they paddled northwards around Latigo Point and on towards Paradise Cove. It was like any of their other training days. The couple were happy and excited to spend the time together. The wind was light and the seas were fairly calm. As they paddled into the sea that day, they were never to return again. There were no further sightings of the couple alive. Tamara's body was found 2 days later. This story is based on the findings and subsequent report by the case investigator Ralph Collier. The following is one of the number of possibilities that could have happened to the couple and is based on circumstantial evidence. After finishing their coffee, they put on their windbreakers and zipped them up over their swimsuits. These were blue and black wetsuit-style jackets that kept them warm on the open water. As the wind was picking up, there was a chill in the air. The couple paddled to about 100 yards out, remaining shoreside of the kelp beds. They knew it was safer not to paddle beyond the kelp forests, as more often than not, they act as a natural deterrent to sharks. After heading around Latigo Point, the wind buffeted them. It whipped the surface of the sea, the salt spray wetting their faces and stinging their eyes. They bowed their heads against it, digging in and persevering. The training route usually took them 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how long they stopped for a swim at the halfway point. Today, it was taking them a bit longer. They lashed their kayaks together as Tamara was being blown off course. The momentary pause in paddling gave them a breather and some respite. They decided to continue. Roy made headway in the lead kayak, cutting a wake for Tamara to follow. He felt the tugging of the rope every so often as it went taut, pulling Tamara back on course. It wasn't long before they could see their halfway destination, Paradise Cove. But they never made it. Suddenly, without warning, there was a tremendous smash from below the water. Something from the depths torpedoed upwards and struck the boats from underneath. The two of them were thrown from their kayaks and slammed into the sea. Tamara resurfaced, coughing and sputtering, unsure of what had just happened. Seconds later, she felt a tremendous tug on her left thigh and was pulled underwater. Kicking and thrashing around, she desperately tried to pull herself to the surface, but a shark had a strong grip of her leg. She could feel her lungs about to burst as the shark twisted and turned underwater. Roy had knocked his head on his kayak when he had been thrown into the ocean. Dazed and dizzy, he frantically blinked, trying to make sense of the situation. Seconds later, he heard the terrified screams of his girlfriend as she momentarily resurfaced. He wheeled around to see a sea of red and their upturned kayaks bobbing in the water. He immediately swam over to the commotion and managed to grab Tamara's hand. Pulling her above the surface of the water, she gasped for breath. He held on to her, trying desperately to pull her to the boats. The hulls of the kayaks were wet and slippery. Each time he tried to grab on, his hand would slip. He lifted one side, trying to flip it back over, but the weight was immense, and whilst holding onto Tamara with one arm, he didn't have the strength to right the boat. He tried again and again. The commotion in the water was witnessed by Margaret Bloom. As she looked out of her living room windows at 10:15 that morning, she noticed an incredible boiling of the water and thrashing about. It was out past the kelp beds near a large United States Coast Guard buoy. She spotted a number of seals leap out of the water onto the surface of the buoy, avoiding the churning sea. They were anxious and agitated. It is unclear whether this commotion was a shark attacking one of the seals or whether it was the actual attack on Tamara and Roy. If it was the former and had unsuccessfully caught a seal, the same shark may have turned its attention to the kayaks a few moments later. As Roy held on to Tamara, keeping her afloat, he could feel her slipping away. The shark had severed her femoral artery and she was bleeding out. But the shark hadn't finished yet. It returned, and in a frantic attack, it took hold of Roy and dragged him underwater, never to be seen again. When the couple didn't show up to work the next day, their friends and colleagues raised the alarm. People knew that Tamara and Roy had taken the kayaks out, and they knew their routine paddle. The kayaks were found the day after the attack. They were floating and upturned less than 20 miles from where the couple had paddled, on the opposite side of Santa Monica Bay. The kayaks had stress fractures along their hulls, and one had a hole in the bow. On examination of this evidence, an engineer suggested that significant impact and force would cause this kind of damage. The object that struck the kayaks needed to have been in excess of 2,000 pounds, or 900 kilograms, and traveling at least 17 knots. These are characteristics of a great white shark. These incredible apex predators are also known to attack their prey from behind or from underneath, often shooting out of the water as they do so. The following day, the crew of a sailing boat found Tamara's body floating in the water. The current had carried her 30 miles north of Paradise Cove, near Channel Islands Harbor. She was still wearing her jacket, which suggests that she wasn't swimming when she was attacked. Her injuries included deep bite wounds to her upper thighs. One had severed her femoral artery and vein, and the other measured more than 34 centimeters or 13 inches in diameter. She had bruising to her hand and head, possibly from being thrown from her kayak. From the size of the bite marks and severity of the injuries, it was concluded that a great white shark measuring at least 5 feet long had been the cause of the fatality. Following the discovery of Tamara's body, the United States Coast Guard conducted a search and rescue operation by both boat and helicopter to try and find Roy. After a week-long search, no trace of him was ever found. This devastating attack happened within sight of the shore, and yet no one witnessed it. The young couple were both fit and adventurous. Although Tamara was new to kayaking, Roy had been on the water since childhood, and both were exceptional swimmers. Their lives were cut tragically short, simply doing what they loved. While the ocean and its beaches provide us with some of nature's greatest playgrounds, we must remember that this is the shark's habitat, not ours. And despite how experienced and prepared you might be, one encounter with these murderous creatures can lead you to your unfortunate final affliction.